Hey everybody. It is surprisingly light outside, which means it's just earlier now that I'm recording this video compared to when I normally make videos. My name is Daniel Young. I'm the owner and founder of Adaptive Perspective and the Adaptive Perspective social media platforms, and I am talking strategy today. Uh, we need a strategy session that's separate from the regular closed-end fun videos. So I'm gonna attempt to make updated strategy videos whenever it's called for. So whether that's monthly or quarterly, I don't know. Maybe that's just kind of updates as needed. But I know the regular weekly picks videos are long with all the pre-strategy worked into things. So I want to make a strategy video that I can reference in those picks videos to help make the closed and fun picks videos shorter so I can be more to the point there. And then I can list all the strategy out here. So before I get into things, this is an unedited video. Who knows what you'll hear in the background as I film these in my house. I am not a financial advisor. I am a strategist and a financial strategist, and I don't speak like the herd. I walk in limited company, and sometimes I walk alone. And these sessions are raw video. You get to see all my mistakes, all get to see everything. Uh, yeah, I think that's transparent. That's the more honest way to do video. So the strategy of things, uh, and what I've been thinking really since before the election and then since the election. So Trump's win did cause an uptick in U.S. dollar strength, while the bond market dropped because of inflationary fears, which to me doesn't make sense. So why would that happen? You have newbie investors and their handlers, meaning all those guys that tour the talk show circuit of bad advice. Like all the corporate media uh, networks have some type of financial news, and most newbie investors get their financial advice from those guys. Those guys and gals, I guess, but those people have inflationary fears because the current government is spending $6.5 trillion. And that's a lot of money in the economy. And they fear Trump's economy will spend more. But those guys, they were wrong about the election. They were wrong about a lot of other things. They have not been listening to Trump. They've been trying to spin their own narratives and disregarding the facts, which means all of their newbie investors, all of their investors in general who watch them for advice are getting all of this skewed rationale and not the facts. So Trump's plans slash 75% of government in spending in less than 2 years. Welcome companies back into the US. Incentivize American made via tax breaks for citizens and tariffs for imports. All of those things will strengthen the dollar. That's what we want. But Trump has no plans to spend all the incoming money. He wants to lower inflation because he knows that that's going to make life easier for us. He wants to use tariffs to pay down the debt. He wants to cut government spending, right? So currently, and I'm going to say this again later, and if I don't, then I don't, but currently we're spending $6.5 trillion, and there's not enough tax money currently to pay for that $6.5 trillion. So if we cut government spending, then that's just a lot more money in our pockets that we can then use to build and grow our wealth. Now, with Trump's win, regardless of these herd people and the herd handlers at these, uh, we'll say the corporate talk show syndicates, with Trump's win, markets are already changing as that future landscape of possibility opens up throughout the country. The future economy is being touted as strong, but the current economy sucks. And we saw that in the last jobs report. I mean, the October jobs report was horrible. It was, gosh, and you got to understand the jobs report already is highly filtered and highly finagled data. So with just 12,000 jobs added and illegals fighting Americans for jobs, that's not good news for Americans. That's not good news for anybody. And if companies are struggling to create jobs in this market, the underlying market and prices are not favorable for companies, but they're also not favorable for their existing employees or any hopeful or future employees. And it also means that all of us are suffering in the existing economy. And something's got to change, right? So that was the mandate given through the election of Trump is with Trump's win and the Republicans holding the House and the Senate and Trump winning the popular vote, the mandate is fix the issues. So for now, and I imagine going forward, so long as the Fed and the Labor Department still control these things at the moment, it's those jobs reports are compromised. They're not accurate. You've got all the seasonal workers filtered into the whole, and then that's averaged out and even projected. So I don't know if the incoming labor secretary would fix all of those things. That'd be nice. But I do know the Fed manipulates their data. We've seen that month in and month out. We also know they manipulate because they're not helping the economy or the overall strength of the dollar. We've got stagflation and a Fed that's behind the times. They're concerned with their power and not your bills. The Fed via their chair Jerome Powell announced a 25 point basis cut for uh, the 25 point cut because Powell said the labor market and inflation is leveling. Really? Like seriously, do you call 12,000 jobs leveling? Do you call it a great economy? And that's what they're advertising, but it's not, right? So most people would get fired for those results, especially when they lie about it. But that's the whole issue with government inefficiency. The same people who got us into inflation are the same people who are tasked with fixing it. And if you were in their shoes, if you caused inflation, would your boss let you fix it? Probably not. So that's the current government model, and that's what changes soon. But I also know that Powell likes power because of his response to a recent interview. He said that if President-elect Trump asked him to resign, he would not abdicate or he would not leave his position of power. But that's not how this works. I mean, so elect Trump can't replace him, but President Trump, as you know, former President Trump asking him to leave early doesn't have to leave. Powell doesn't have to leave early, but installed president or confirmed or inaugurated President Trump has every right to replace him. So the Fed thinks they hold all the power and they can manipulate the economy and nothing else matters. And nothing else meaning not you, not me, not the country, just them and their power. But the Banking Act of 1935 says the chairman is chosen by the president, right? To then serve and get advice from the Senate. But it's like, I'm not going to resign early if you ask me, knowing that you're going to replace me because I like my position. I like all this stuff. And you could make a lot of arguments for Powell for staying, right? You would keep your job and the money coming in, but somebody's going to hire that guy. Somebody is going to hire that guy. Uh, yeah, but regardless, so we'll say appointment wise, the president appoints the chair, and then the Senate Committee on Banking is tasked with communicating and uh, working with the chair of the Fed. But back to government inefficiency, the Fed is inefficient and it's bulky. So, question wise, could you think of a life without the Fed meddling in everything? I mean, the Fed does quantitative tightening where they pull money out. Then they do quantitative easing where they pump money into the market. And they're continually influencing the economy and the perceived value of the dollar, not the actual value of the dollar. It's paper money. It says a dollar. Most people think it's a dollar, but it's not always worth a dollar. In the last 4 years, your dollar has been devalued 17 cents. Since the Fed's been created, they've devalued the dollar almost 80%. So can you think of a life without the Fed? And it's a really strange concept to a lot of people, but there was a time when we didn't have the Fed, and there was a time when we were backed by gold and not the dollar, or not everybody's uh, perceived value of the dollar. It's hard to have inflation when you can't print money out of your basement. I mean, remember the Fed printed $4 trillion in a really short span of time and then said, oh my gosh, I can't believe that we created inflation. My 11-year-old, my 10-year-old at the time, understood inflation better than what the Federal Reserve chair explained in his conference about inflation. Think about that. They are lying to us. They like power. Do we really need them? Right? The Fed going forward faces an uphill battle with Elon Musk and Vivek looking into government inefficiency and all the random BS crap that we buy, and also just the overall tracking of money. They're inviting Ron Paul to join the cause, and Ron Paul is the greatest critic of the Fed and the RS in the last several decades. Okay, Ron Paul wanted to end the Fed back in the 80s or back in the 90s whenever he faced Bush. I mean, think about that. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but think about that. If the Fed and the IRS left and we had no one influencing inflation and we had no one collecting taxes, how much better would your life be? One, but also how much more would you have to invest? Think about your tax bracket, whatever that is, and think about that amount of money existing inside your pocket, not being paid to the federal government to then misuse, right? Not give cocaine to rats and have watch shrimp run on treadmills and send a squirrel to Mars. Like, think of all the BS stuff they do. And gosh, how different departments blow billions of dollars and have no idea where it went. Think of all of that excess cut and back in your pocket. Think of your retirement then. So, getting into market sectors, bonds. Bonds is everybody's favorite at the moment. The people that I read, I mean, I'll read the free stuff from Seeking Alpha just to get a different opinion. I like the Contrarian Outlook group, um, and I do pay for their stuff. I pay for their basic membership, and it gives me more stuff to think about. And on their group, the two people I read the most are Michael Foster, who is a closed-end fund savvy investor, and I read Brett Owens, who heads up the group, and he talks about everything: single stocks, uh, ETFs, closed-end funds, the full gambit. What I find interesting is that Brett Owens is wishy-washy, like flip-flopping between bond bull, bond bear, and Michael Foster, same group, has a completely different take. And Brett Owens lately is wishy-washy. He's pushing bond bull, then he pulls back and does bond bear. And it doesn't make a ton of sense to me. It's like week to week, day to day, the advice changes. Versus Michael Foster is pushing his version of a bond bull, and I think there's merit there. But I also I fear the I don't fear. I'm wary to the possibility of a bond sale coming from the Fed and those herd handlers. So I don't want to invest where the herd is, but I do want to know where they are and where they're getting steered. And as for the herd in general, we're back to their fears and not reality, right? So immediately following Trump's win, you have the overall value of the US dollar going up. We want that. The yield on treasuries went down. So the herd handlers could be steering their investors away from bonds so that bond values drop, right? And then the herd handlers themselves could get great deals by almost fear pumping the market. Or maybe they're closer to the mark. Maybe, maybe not. Random something in my eye. So the Fed controls short-term rates, kind of. I mean, they manipulate them, they control them. But if the Fed were truly controlling short-term rates, then the mortgage rates would have dropped and stayed down, following the last rate dip, but they haven't. Since the election, rates have gone up. Now, while the Fed attempts to control the short-term rates, the long-term rates are completely different. And with rate cuts and lower long-term rates, there's speculation that the Fed would sell their treasuries, flood the bond market, and then watch prices drop, and then buy another batch of bonds when the prices are lower so they get a better return of investment. So remember that bonds are supposed to track opposite of interest rates, and it's currently a mixed bag. We really haven't seen that traditional factor happen yet with interest rates lower, bonds going up in value. We haven't seen that. So with lower short-term rates and lower long-term payouts, the Fed threatening to dump their bonds, I'm hesitant to buy bonds unless you just find a steal. And there are a couple steals currently on the market, but it's a coin flip on what strategy is best for you. And a coin is not two sides, it's really three, right? So it's, can you find a crazy discount on corporate bonds? Yes. Do you want to wait for a sell-off so you can scoop a potential better deal? I can argue for that. I can also argue against it. It's uh, like if we look at bigger number data, if you're going to buy bonds at $6.50 and hope they scale up to 12, right? Or more than $12 a share. Like if you're going to hope they go up in value that much, then buying that initial purchase at 650 or 630 or 680 isn't really that different overall. I mean, yeah, it's 20 cents here, 20 cents there compared to where you want it to go, right? Everybody wants something to go. Everybody who invests in the market wants the overall value to go up, right? The difference with the bond sale is if the Fed dumps treasuries and bond values go down, I don't think it's going to fluctuate that 20 cents. I think it has dropped further, right? But at the same time, on the bounce back, I think they would gain value again. So whether you're buying at 650 and then it drops to $4, I mean that initial, it's like a price shock, sticker shock. It's like, oh my gosh, what happened? But at the same time, if you give it time, I think it'll come back up. And in the meantime, should you ride the fence? Like, would you dabble a little? Would you pick up great discounts while they happen and then wait for the bigger dip? Really just depends on your strategy. Michael Foster, the counter to Brett Owens and bonds, lately explains it this way. So the US government will spend more and interest rates will rise higher than rates elsewhere in the world in response. And that'll attract foreign capital or think just money in general. So that will attract foreign capital to America while making it less attractive for capital or money to leave America. So remember, Trump in general is talking about tariffs to pay down our debt and then cutting 75% of government bloat in salaries and spending. So the current budget's $6.5 trillion, and Congress hasn't collected enough taxes to cover it. Right now, back to Foster. So all that extra capital in America, all that extra money in America will boost economic activity and demand for the dollar. Right now, you get dollar strength, but it will also boost consumer prices. Now, I disagree because mass deportation, if it happens, mass deportation equals more availability of everything a consumer would buy. You get more oil, more gas, more groceries, more readily available resources, more energy. Okay, so if we decrease the demand for those things or decrease the competition for those things, then consumer prices would drop. And while I don't agree with the herd handlers or whatever that corporate media syndicate, we can use their fear pump to our advantage. Stocks are going to dip in general. Scalps initial. So Trump won the election. You had that initial spike in the market. Since then, it's dropped, right? And we're kind of back to this stagflation, poor economy, shitty economy woes. So we can use that fear pumping into the market to still score a pretty good discount. And as for bonds, Foster and I agree that the fears are oversold, though he's less political about it. So with more money coming into the US, a US bond fund might be more appealing than a global bond fund. If we're gonna You have Trump inviting money back, companies back, manufacturing back, right? A US based bond fund might be more appealing than a global bond fund. But if you're in the mindset, there's still some discounts out there for US based bond companies. For stocks, I'm on the fence because I get that stocks have jumped since election day, kind of. They've slipped a little bit, but I'm still just not sold on adding stocks. Um, I guess based on strategy or pending your strategy, maybe if you were adding a diversified fund or convertible shares where they could flip between bonds and stocks. But I'm not a guy that likes diversity for diversity's sake. I mean, I really like targeted investments. I really like investing with purpose. Um, I think diversification for diversification's sake really just costs you money. So from bonds, and I guess from stocks too, oil and energy. Uh, Bidenomics had the worst possible game plan for oil and how that impacted Americans. And Harris's plan was actually worse because she was going to further curtail oil production and fracking and everything else. She really did want to force people into electric vehicles and then stop coal mining. But thankfully, we don't have to strategize that. Thankfully, we don't have to deal with that right now. So, what most people don't realize is oil and all the byproducts make so many different things that are just integral to general living in this culture, this society. There's so many things you just get like it's so readily available, so easy to pass up. You just get blind to it in a way. Um, I mean, computers, mouse pads, shoes, the see the video of what's behind me, but those shelves behind me, the stain and the lacquer, that picture frame, part of these things on the shelf, all of those are oil byproducts. Pacemakers, crutches, glasses. Like there's so many things that are byproducts or offshoots of oil that when you cut oil, the cost of everything goes up. One, we're not energy independent, so we're importing a lot of things. We're paying for that, but also the cost of everything goes up because it's much harder to make it with a decreased supply of oil. So the cut of oil production didn't just automatically increase our prices. It was how we bought oil from other people. The US Bidenomics bought dirty, like the dirtiest oil possible, shipped it to South America on a diesel powered ship, had the oil cleaned up and filtered, and then brought it to the US on another diesel powered ship, right, to eventually be transported to consumers. All while we were told that oil is evil and we shouldn't use it as much. And they attempted to increase our oil costs, our gas costs, everything else to the point of pushing us into a $60,000 electric vehicle, but not everybody bought not everybody bought the mindset, and then not everybody has the ability to buy an electric vehicle, which is still dependent upon the energy grid, right? So oil cost went up, and so did everything else, right? And the supply and demand of that, gosh, the supply and demand was felt through the entire system of things, right? So cut supply, increase demand, especially through general population as well as the illegal population on top of that. And both of, or say everything combined, pushed prices higher on top of the Federal Reserve printing trillions and then trying to somehow cut that money back out. So cutting oil impacts the production of everything else, right? And the lack of oil increases everyone's prices on everything else, including renewable energy, which is not as renewable as what it's sold. Solar requires oil to be made. Wind requires oil to be made, installed, and used. And then the windmills decimate the local raptor population. So you're damaging the environment in order to save the environment. And then when the blades have to get replaced, they go to a special landfill and are not repurposed or recycled. And that water hydroelectric uh, system requires oil to be made and installed. And unless you're doing something small on your property, it requires oil to be used and maintained. And all the renewable energies are just knockoff alternatives that are still dependent upon oil. They're not like, I get it, solar panel. We built the solar panel and installed it. It collects solar energy and uses it. It's not net zero. Like you can argue that it's renewable because it's solar based, but you wouldn't have it without oil, and you can't maintain it without oil. And if it goes bad, you're just using more oil to build another solar panel, which is then transported across the ocean on a diesel ship in order to get here. So you can put renewable energy on your roof or wherever you put it. Um, so no oil is a decreased volume of oil, and that equals less opportunity to use an alternative source of energy, and then less ability to collect a government subsidy for your alternative method. The alternative energy market does not compete with oil unless the government subsidizes and tweaks those figures and then pays you for it. So Elon Musk, I mean, that's his bread and butter. He's brilliant. He used advertising to sell his EV cars that do not improve the environment. They're actually worse for the environment and the road than a regular combustible engine. So he used advertising to sell these EV cars to an ignorant group of people. And if you're amongst the midst, I'm not like it's not my goal to offend you. It's just the reality of you're buying a car that's actually worse for the environment than a traditional car. You've got oil to make the car's body, oil to make all the tech, oil to make the tires, which are actually worse for the road, oil to make the battery that costs $20,000 to $30,000 to replace, depending on car model. You've got oil to power the power plant that powers the car. Uh, you you're taking a natural resource from another country that's delving deeper into the earth and probably being farmed out by either a child slave farm or child labor farm or any other random like a prisoner farm, and they're digging into the earth, taking something out, and it's not a renewable resource. So you're ending up with a vehicle that's actually worse for the environment, that does more damage to the environment than an oil-based, combustible engine car. And since the government subsidizes the EV world, every EV car is a further drain on the grid and another tick mark for helping the oil market, right? The electric vehicle market actually keeps the oil market running because everything about that car needs oil in order to make it work. Outside of the uh, hazardous materials you're taking from second and third world countries. So decreasing oil only worsens our problems across the board. and increases your cost on buying anything across the board. Uh, yeah, it's just, let's see, I've got my soapbox of that's not renewable energy. So, but if I step off that soapbox, solar panels, wind power, uh, hydroelectric stuff, that stuff is needed. I mean, if you're off grid in the middle of nowhere, you need something to help you gather energy. But it's not for everyone, and it should not be coming from a government mandate forsaking oil and telling you that it's better than oil. I mean, that's just lying to you. So on oil, Bidenomics and Kamala's plan, cut oil. Trump will reinvigorate the oil market. He wants made in America, and he wants us energy independent. So that's oil, manufacturing, pick your product. He wants it done here. We were energy independent when Trump was president last time. That's his plan again. But he actually wants to expound upon that. He wants to grow that. So higher homeland production equals cheaper everything. You get cheaper oil because there's more of it, cheaper gas, and you're not paying to transport it all over the world for us. If other people want to buy from us, that's great. They can buy our excess, right? So we have natural homeland-based oil production, so that equals cheaper gas, cheaper groceries, cheaper cost of production, cheaper cost of stuff, crutches, pacemakers, all the computer chips. You get more local jobs, all great wins for us. Okay. And then factor in the immigration policy of exporting all the illegals from any number of countries, right? And the supply in general will expand as demand decreases. So if we do accomplish a mass deportation, the price easing will be seen across the board. So you get more people, crazy high demand, less oil, less supply, increased cost everywhere and on everything. But less people is less demand, more oil is greater supply. Then you get decreased cost everywhere. So the oil and energy transfer markets would grow. The grid itself is shaky. I mean, there's a national grid. Texas has its grid that actually supplies power to parts of Oklahoma and New Mexico, which would not be the Texas grid. But the grid itself needs to grow. But we haven't seen real energy grid growth in years. I have heard of nuclear power going back into Illinois. I have heard of more nuclear power coming to Texas. That would be a lot better than solar and wind. I mean, nuclear power would be a lot more power for everybody, right? And then updating all the components of the grid would help everybody. But we just haven't seen a lot of overall grid growth in years, and we need it. But less people would take pressure off the grid, right? But then tech in general, so less people would take pressure off the grid. However, tech is also stressing the grid more and more to the point where uh, technology companies have cooling centers for all of their processors, and they're looking towards liquid natural gas instead of electric because liquid natural gas or LNG is cheaper, right? So if tech takes itself off the grid, if tech goes LNG instead of electric, now there's just more power in general on the grid. However, the grid is older, it needs to be updated. Uh, let's see. So deportation. So less people in the U.S. equals less demand in the U.S. More energy would drive costs down further in the U.S. It would help combat inflation. But there are still companies who own foreign energy and energy transfer companies. So we'd be decreasing people in the U.S., not necessarily decreasing the world's ongoing need for energy. We would just be selling the extra energy instead of just stretching ourselves and trying to generate more. Uh, Back to electric vehicles. Electric vehicles highly impact the grid. Right now, most people haven't bought into the hype around the electric vehicle. Car manufacturers have already moved away from that market. Musk at one point was competing with all of these other car companies and electric vehicles, but a lot of car companies have canceled their electric vehicle program because it's not as profitable and it cannot compete with the other end of the car buying spectrum. I mean, it can't compete without the government, and people aren't interested in buying a an electric vehicle, honestly, for 60 grand plus, right? And then we have every hurricane and natural disaster exposing the risk of owning an electric vehicle. That car needs juice, right? It needs a supply. And when there's a natural disaster, hurricane, tornado, earthquake, uh, forest fire, pick your natural disaster, and the power is cut off, it's really hard to juice your vehicle. I mean, that Tesla truck makes a great near bulletproof zombie apocalypse vehicle until it runs out of juice. So bonds, stocks, oil, and energy. Last on the list is the housing market. The housing market will shift. We're still behind on production, but we're not as far behind. Well, this is a hard sentence. Let's see. We're still behind on production. Housing market is cyclical. It's a consumer product, but it works different than most other consumer products. What I dislike about how stocks are categorized, everything, I mean everything. Maybe bonds are different. I'll say everything but bonds and loans are consumers or consumer based. I mean, they move in a circular pattern of need. Oil, supposedly, like you get a higher demand in summer because people travel more, but people are traveling all the time. Uh, Gas grills go on sale at different times, cars go on sales at different times, right? The housing market is its own subcategory, but it's also consumer based in the sense of you see greater traffic around the school year. So you see greater migration, uh, greater greater movement between for any number of reasons around the school year. So at the start of the year, say between May, maybe April and September, there's a lot of foot traffic trying to find new homes, people moving into school districts, people moving out of school districts. You see the same thing at the start of the year. So maybe like November to January, you still get some traffic of school district change. You also see job changes and lease changes. So in that cyclical nature, the housing market will shift. We're currently behind pace, or however you want to draw your circle, right? But we're not as far behind if we have, or well, not if we have to, if we export 40 million people, right, or 10 million people, if we export a high number of illegals, that's going to decrease demand to where we're still behind on the overall production. We're not caught up, right? There's still going to be need to make more housing, but if we export a ton of people, we're going to reach that peak of we're caught up, we almost have too much, and then housing will drop back off. So I think the housing market overall is still a great long-term play because we're still strained, like we're still behind pace. We still need more square footage to help people out. It's harder because interest rates are high and because inflation is high. But if we can curtail inflation, if we can really lower interest rates, then I think the housing market gets more competitive. Okay. And having more supply on hand, it'll still be competitive, but it won't be the same kind of competition. It is it's hard to leave your low interest rate house to then take on a higher loan, and you're competing against all these other people. If I don't know, if 30% of that market space gets housed in a different country, it's going to be easier to find a house. However, if there's just not that much on the market, it still makes it hard. So as we still work to catch up production, The housing market is a great investment opportunity. I mean, I'm hoping it's not as strained as it is, but we're still behind pace. And on the housing market, tariffs would impact the housing market because a lot of companies get their supplies from overseas. Okay, tariffs would also impact that fake renewable energy market because China currently produces 78% of the renewable energy product. I mean, I think well, I don't think the top four solar panel manufacturers are all based in China. So we hit five different market sectors. So where does that leave us? Where's the best place to invest? So if consumer stocks, people are trying to hype an end of year market surge. And we saw that a little bit, but it's already slumped. But I don't think that's the place to be. I mean, consumer stocks are just not like I'm interested there. It's just not, I don't know, it's not pushing my buttons. As we look from where we are to where we hope the market goes, I mean, the market looks forward like a stumbling toddler, and it generally overlooks presidential elections, or really any election cycle. You'll get a boost post-election, and that'll slowly taper, right? If the market goes up, it's not going to go up based on the Fed or their manipulated jobs report. The market's going to go up based on future hope, right? The future hope of an incoming president. So maybe it'll go up mid-January. Okay, it'll go up on his hope. It'll go up on his installment, and then or his inauguration, and then the game plan, and then the overall hope built into the promises he made during the campaign. Um, so yeah, consumer stocks. I'm sifting through notes as I make this because I make these videos and I make all these notes, and then I end up combining points and restating things and skipping over stuff that I have to go back to. Um, Me personally in consumer stocks, or I guess us and our investments, I'm not looking to add. It's uh, just not, yeah, I can't frame it well. As of right now, and it's the fun of live video and the fun of raw video. It's, yeah, I've made all my points. I just don't see us investing in consumer stocks right now. Oil itself, not unless you find a really crazy discount. Prices were high initially. I mean, before they took off again, like if we bought oil now, and your counter argument can be the same thing. It's like, look, if you're hoping to get $40 a share, there's not much difference between $9 a share and $12.50 a share. That $3.50 compared to $40 is not a huge thing. Correct. But it's the discount end of things. Whatever we're going to invest in, we're looking for that discount that's better than the historic discount to make sure we get an amazing deal. So the overall share price comes into that, but it's really the discount. On the consumer end of things, like a stronger dollar and more people investing into the US, those are good things. They are. So maybe you could argue getting in now when that market space is not great, hoping, right, relying on hope and hoping it would take off when Trump gets inaugurated and his plan really starts to take effect. You could go for that. I could back that strategy. I could back that strategy, but that's also not our focus right now. That might be third on the list.
Yeah, but it's not the focus. Oil, same thing. It's not the focus. Uh, for bonds present a decent opportunity pending you pick the right discount and the right firm. And then the bond proxies of energy and utilities, which is kind of doublespeak. I mean, they generally track together. Energy transfer and utilities would be a better category name. The short version of just saying, so energy transfer and utilities, right? If we're going to produce a lot more oil and a lot more energy with nuclear power, energy transfer becomes really important. And utilities, how we all get our power, how tech companies cool their products, that becomes really important. So bonds, maybe. I would put that as number two for me. Pending firm, pending discount. Energy transfer would go along with it, but honestly, I think we're late to the energy and utility game plan. I think really the best time to have been in bonds was maybe 6 to 24 months ago. If we see a slight surge because the fears are overblown in regards to how the economy will respond to Trump, bonds, yes. Energy transfer would really depend on discount. Uh, let's see. Going back over notes, making sure I'm on track. But with bonds and bonds proxies, I mean, if the Fed purges, everything's going to tumble. You can scoop an amazing deal when it tumbles, and it'll surge back. In the meantime, you have fear pumping into the market. Those things will dip anyway. Could be a decent time to buy there. Um, I mean, I see how to say this. I like using the herd's fear of things. I do because where they're fearful of buying, those sectors drop, like the prices drop because they're not interested. So I think if you can find an unloved sector, bonds, bond proxies, energy utilities, or energy transfer utilities pending price and discount, that represents a good possibility. I also like investing where the herd just doesn't want to go for whatever reason. So of the major sectors, bonds, maybe pending, right? Consumer stocks, maybe, maybe. That's probably third on the list. You get bond proxies second. Third would be consumers or consumer stocks if you could really justify it. Oil, not really. Uh, and I get the pricing game, but for us, not really. And then what else have I talked about? Uh, Real estate is last. Let's see, consumer stocks, oil, bonds, energy transfer and utilities. There we go. And then real estate. Um, so we could use the herd's fear and finagle our way into more bonds or more energy transfer and utilities. But for whatever reason, what the herd does not like right now is real estate. And it still seems like the best long-term investment for the current market because we're still waiting for production and supply to catch up. I mean, outside of a few firms, overall, real estate is down across the board. People are scared and they're dogging the funds and they are abandoning the funds. Interesting, rain for any number of reasons. Um, and outside of real estate, they've been running into all of these different options. Then you have the herd, you have that herd syndicate going, well, don't do bonds, this, and so they're getting steered into oil and consumer stocks and the rest. So if I mean real estate sounds like and looks like a good option pending firm. Uh, so it feels like kind of the perfect play for us. Now, it's also scary in the sense of you're buying something steeply discounted and undervalued. The best discount on the market remains at close to 55% off. So if you're going dollar for dollar, if every dollar invested is a dollar, I guess every dollar spent is a dollar invested, you would be paying a break even zero discount. So at 55% off, it's like paying 45 cents for every dollar invested. You're getting a fantastic deal, but that's really scary because the discount is so steep, right? But worst case scenario, so you buy it for $5.40 a share or whatever it's priced at. Worst case scenario, the company liquidates, it's liquidating at the net asset value and not the cost that you pay it. You're buying the discount. Worst case scenario, it sells at whatever it's valued at, $12, $13, whatever it is, right? So you're buying the discount, hoping and expecting and praying and planning for that discount window to close, at which point you can reevaluate and sell it, or you can hold on and buy more, or you just hold and watch it grow. Um, but in real estate, we're behind pace. And as companies add more square footage, more homes, new builds, more acquisitions, we'll catch back up to pace, right? But the whole thing of our adapted perspective is using the discount, paying attention to the herd, and then buying low. I mean, it's using people's fear of the market or using people's fears in investing, not so much against them, but for our gain. Like they're really afraid of this and the value slips. That's a really great time to buy. And that CNN Fear and Greed Index is a great overall indicator of market sentiment, but it's not always accurate in regard to individual market sectors. Like it could be neutral, and then you look at the overall oil market or real estate market or bond market, and it could just be really undervalued, like oversold fears for any number of reasons. And while the market in general is kind of mixed, you could pick up a really amazing deal at a really low price, hoping, knowing, expecting that to take off again. So it's it's one thing to be like, I know where the hurt is and I want to invest separately. It's quite another to realize this is really scary in the sense of nobody else is here. Like it's almost like a pat on the back when somebody else is in that sector buying alongside you because it's like, hey, somebody else thinks like me. But sometimes you're on your own. And that's intimidating because it's maybe something you haven't done before, or maybe you're still like, man, I hope I'm not making this giant mistake. And I can understand. I relate to that. I every time I invest something, like it's one thing to have money sitting in your account, like just cash money. Quite another to actually invest it with purpose with somebody, right? Because you're relying on hope and sentiment to grow that overall value in your favor, and you're trying to do your best to optimize your investment. But when everybody, or what seems like everybody, is being steered one direction, when you stop to question motives and do your own thing, it's kind of intimidating, but you get used to it. It's not to say the feeling goes away. It's, I always hesitate and double check myself when I invest. I just do. And that would be with $1,000. It could be with $10,000. I always, it's like, am I really investing in the right thing? And the hesitancy, I think, is good. But when you let that fear control you, you are no better than the herd because now you are just being steered by fear. And that's not our goal. We want to invest with purpose. We want to invest based on solid strategy. And regardless of where the herd is, regardless of, I mean, you could listen to five different people telling you five different things, right? All trying to steer you in one specific direction. You need to react based on your strategy and what's best for you. We're not playing the 1 year investment game. We're not playing a 5 year investment game. We're playing the long term, and your long term is based on your strategy. So figure out your strategy, figure out your goals, figure out what the overall purpose of your system is, and then use the current market to achieve your long term goals, right? Or your long term, like whatever your long term aims are. That's the point. It's use the existing market, get the best deal, the best discount, the best price point for whatever it is, best dividend, whatever your strategy is. Ours is discount when it pays out. And then ideally, we want to find something that pays 9% or better, unless you can make a good argument for buying a cheaper dividend. And by cheaper, I mean really like 8%, which is still so much better than the 1.2% you're getting out of the S&P average, right? So is it a historical discount? Does it pay monthly? Is it 9% or better? 8%, you can make an argument. 8.5%, you can make an argument for. Uh, is the payout sustainable? Is it a growing dividend? Does it have a lot of promise for the future? Right. And then based on the existing market setup, so oil, energy transfer and utilities, bonds, consumer stock versus real estate, of those, which makes the most sense for this market going forward? So we start out with a list, we slowly trim it down, discount when it pays out, dividend, and then based off what's on the list, we're using the existing market, current situation, and uh, current trends as well as long-term projections to buy the best possible thing we can buy now for future growth later. And then as to how long you hold it, whether you're holding it for a lifetime or for just a span of time, that's up to you. You can hold it for a lifetime and collect a fat dividend. And when the market does this, when you're riding the wave, nobody likes when it dips under, but then you're using the dip to buy more of it to keep your overall price low. Because at some point, maybe you will sell it, right? And you want the best return for your investment. Or maybe if it's to hold it short term, maybe you hold it short term, collect dividends, watch the price escalate a little bit, and then sell it, and then you're swinging all of that profit forward into your next buy. So whether you hold it or sell it quick or whichever, you're swinging your proceeds forward. And if you're doing it in a cash account, you're paying capital gains taxes on everything you make profit on. If you're doing it inside of a Roth, it's all tax free, so long as you jump through the hoops. So if you do it inside a Roth, it's tax free, so long as you jump through the hoops. I want to say the hoops are like 59 and a half or 60, but after 60, you can take out whether your initial deposit or your gains. And when you add it, so when you withdraw it, it's not taxable income. It gets notated on your taxes, but it's actually not taxable income because you jump through the hoops. If you do it through a cash option brokerage account, if you're selling for profit, that's taxed. Whenever you take it, like regardless, I guess, of whether you take it out or not, like your gains are tracked, and then you're taxed based on your sell value versus purchase value. So there's a huge advantage to putting money in a Roth if you're going to leave it there a long time, right? But if you want quicker access to stuff, then you put it in a money market account or a cash-based account, right? But for us and our strategy, it's discount when it pays, monthly dividend based upon existing market sectors that we can see growth in for the long term. That's our strategy in a nutshell at the very end. So I've talked a lot. This is all I have for the video. I know I've talked a lot. I've hopefully not talked my way into circles, but hopefully not. It's all I got. So in gosh, I was writing a script for one of my closed-end fun video or closed-end fun selection videos and realized I needed this strategy video. I also realized I needed an update on why we use closed-end funds as opposed to individual funds. So this is just one of two additional or I guess another additional two total that I need to make in addition to the regular closed-end fund picks. So this one explains strategy. The other one would explain why we use closed-end funds, and then I'll still just keep making the pick selections weekly, and then I will update strategy as needed. So if you like the content, I know I've talked a lot. I apologize to a degree, but if you like the content, consider subscribing to my channel. Hit the like button because it really does help push videos out. And then if you want to find me day to day, I have merged content from my various platforms onto Instagram under the same Adapted Perspective handle. You can find me there. Um, and so if you want to comment on this video, comment here. If you want to find overall financial strategy and information, find me on Instagram. And let's see, I still have one more video to make today. So whatever you have planned for the week, I hope it goes well. I hope my ruminations and random thoughts help you craft your strategy or maybe help you eliminate things you don't need to consider. I don't know, but either way, I hope the videos help you. And I will see you on another video unless I don't see you on Instagram first. So just remember that whole manifestation mindset of manifesting where you want to be. Manifestation might make you feel good, might, but it's not going to solve your problems. It's one thing to think it, it's quite another to do it. So if you want something different, if you want something more, then you're going to have to get out there and make it happen. If you actively do it, if you actively think about it, if you actively push yourself into doing those things, it's not that it will simply manifest in front of you. It's that you will do it and then think it and then believe it, and it will slowly integrate itself into your daily life. And that it's more likely to happen because you're working towards that one thing. So don't just think about it. Get out there and do it. This is Daniel Young signing off. I will see you all on another video. Goodbye.